Well, without further delay, then, I'd like to again welcome you to our webinar. And we're going to have a chance to speak with Ivy Gamble, who is the CEO of the Family Center, as well as Naima Chisolm, who is a part of our BTQ team. She is the Director of Business Development. Naima, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you, EJ. How are you? And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Naima Chisolm. I'm a partner at BTQ and director of business development. And I'm so happy to have Ivy Gamble Cobb here to speak with us today. We've been working together for about 20 years at BTQ Financial, and it's great to have this discussion with her today. Ivy, if you wanted to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Ivy Gamble Cobb. I am the Chief Executive Officer and also one of the founders of the Family Center. We're a 32-year-old nonprofit organization based in New York City that has been providing services to vulnerable New York City families for the last 32 years. And this is our anniversary year, Naima. It's been 20 years, one, since I became the executive director, and two, since we partnered with BTQ Financial. So happy anniversary.
Thank you, Ivy. Happy anniversary. So we have a couple of questions that, we wanted to go over with you, Ivy, because we have had such a good partnership over the last 20 years and wanted to get some of your insights.
Sure.
As we know, the Family Center's budget has grown significantly over the last couple of years, which has, resulted in a lot more contracts, additional
Mhm.
reporting requirements, and more complexity of your funding sources. What financial structure investments do you think were most critical when the organization began to grow?
Sure. So, Naima, if you remember when we started 20 years ago, our budget was about $3 million, and it was primarily a mixture of government contracts, federal, state, and city contracts. Even at $3 million, it was pretty complicated because none of the contracts matched our fiscal year. All of them had different reporting requirements. I knew coming in, as a founder and then taking on the role of the executive director at that time, that we wanted to grow and diversify our funding, that we wanted to grow the organization, we wanted to be able to expand in different areas. However, the way we were structured fiscally really cause that to be a challenge, because at $3 million, how much money are you going to be able to really devote to the financial management side? Most of the dollars that we got were for program services. And so trying to find that right balance. So our fiscal department at that time was not very large. It was really one and a half people. Um, so knowing that we wanted to grow who we were and our budget and the services that we provided really made me take a hard look at that time to say, is this the best way for us to be structured in terms of our financial management? Are there some better options for us to be able to consider? And so we begin to have those conversations internally, because when you think about the financial management side, you want person who can bring the big picture, who can sit with us in those strategic conversations and talk about future growth. But then that person also has to be able to put on that hat of, I need to get these vouchers out. I need to be able to respond to funders who have questions regarding our financial reporting. And trying to find that one person and one human being that has that big picture, and also sort of that macro, the macro and the micro, being able to think big picture, but then also hands-on do the work, was really challenging. And we looked at a couple of different things. Is it financial management software? Do we need to be investing there? And at the end of the day, if you don't have the right people managing the software, it doesn't matter. You can have the most, you know, elaborate financial management software that there is. But if you don't have the right person managing it, it's not going to work. And so, as an executive director, one of the first decisions I made was to outsource our fiscal department.
Wow. Well, thank you, Ivy. And I think you really, really explained it clearly. I mean, as you know, with outsourcing, you are able to get kind of a fractional, CFO that is able to work and support the rest of your team. And I think, that really has helped the Family Center grow and look at different funding options. I know that, when we first started working with you is when we started, really looking into opening up the mental health clinic. And I think by having someone, a high level support person that could work with you and manage the rest of the team, really allowed the Family Center to really focus on their mission and
It
other
was
items.
critical. It was absolutely critical. When we started, we were at $3 million. We're
Mhm.
now 6 million
Right.
plus.
Exactly.
That's a double in our budget. But a lot of that was, of course, we're seeking other funding opportunities and what have
Right.
you. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to be responsive. You have to be able to meet the requirements of whatever those donors are, those funders are. As you mentioned, we took on not one, but two licensed
Right.
clinics in the last 20 years. That was a huge, I talk about diversifying
Right.
your funding. That was huge, but we were able to do it because BTQ already had the infrastructure in place to be able to support us as we took on these new lines of business that we wanted to take on.
Right. Okay, thank you. And that really kind of leads us really into the next question, where, as you said, initially the Family Center was really heavily funded by government contracts. And as far as, the strategy that you use to diversify that funding, you know,
Sure.
and how getting financial data helped that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when we started 32 years ago, the Family Center was very much focused on working with families impacted by HIV and AIDS. And that was 99% of the population that we were serving. However, we knew that this model that we had developed would be applicable to working with families impacted by other life-threatening illnesses, substance use, domestic violence, other destabilizing factors. Through being able to show our program data along with our financial data, we could show the cost benefit of this model that we had developed. And then we could take this model to other potential funders to say, this is what we were able to do with families impacted by HIV. We believe that this model would be applicable to working with families that you're working with who are dealing with substance use or domestic violence. This is the program data that we're able to show. This is the fiscal data that we can show that shows the cost benefit of the provision of these services and the outcomes that we're able to achieve for these families. And so we believe by extension, we can show these same positive outcomes with the populations that you're focused on. So that's where it was really important having that program data, having that fiscal data, because it all has to work in tandem together. And we were able to expand beyond working just with families affected by HIV to a wide range of families that are impacted by a number of different issues because we had our program data and we also that showed the positive outcomes, and then we were able to correlate that with the financials to show how much of a benefit this service was in terms of keeping children safe, keeping children in their homes, helping families achieve, again, positive outcomes.
Right. That's great. And it seems like it really must have helped in, explaining to the foundations and other funders, of the gaps that there were in those costs. And, when you spoke with with your, funders, did they ask for, clear financial data to help? And was that important with the BTQ relationship as far as
Absolutely. The financial data is always key. What I often tell my staff is at the end of the day, we can be running the best program, achieving the greatest outcomes. Most funders are not coming on site to see your work.
right?
The only thing that they have to judge you on is what you're submitting to them as a program report and what you're submitting as a fiscal report. All of that has to correlate, all of that has to work together to show the full picture because, again, they're really not coming on site to see what's happening in the work that you're doing. So, again, most everyone knows government is not covering the full cost of a program. I mean, it's a fantasy if you think that they will. There are always unfunded mandates that we are required to meet, and we meet them, right? But being able to show private foundations where that gap is and where they might be able to intervene and intercede is really important. We now see that there's really this push between public and private partnership because it's just a fact of the matter. Government is limited in what they're able to do. And so, if we're truly looking to run comprehensive programs that are really going to address the needs of the clients that we're serving, then we need to be able to bring together the private and the public side of that. When I think about it, I often think of the example of government contracts where, they'll pay for a service, but they don't pay for instance, food, right? That's not uncommon. Food is unallowed. Okay, so people are just supposed to go hungry. That's a little sidebar. But when I think about the programs that we offer for children that are coming to our center after school, they're hungry. They've been in school all day. They're hungry. You want them to sit in the therapeutic group, but you don't want to provide them with any food. So, what sense does that make? But being able to go to a private funder and say, this is what we're able to support with government contracts. These are the gaps, whether it's food, whether it's, additional staff to really provide some enhancement to the program. Whatever it is, being able to show them this is what's happening on this side, this is the value added that you would bring to this program to make it truly comprehensive, to be able to meet the needs of all of the participants. It's a partnership. And so helping them see that, because at the end of the day, private foundations are not going to be picking up what they believe government should be paying for, and they shouldn't. But
Right.
there is a role for them to play, but being able to quantify that for them to say, this is what's being paid for on this side, this is where you need some support, gives you the data that you need to be able to walk into those meetings and have those real conversations where a private foundation is understanding clearly the part that they're playing in terms of meeting this need.
Great, thank you. And I guess, based on what you were saying, as far as kind of, most foundations and most funders, aren't able to come out and see, the organizations that they work with much. And you've mentioned that it's really important for them to get good financial information from you. So, one of the things that, we find is really important is getting you that 990 timely and the audit timely, because I think that that also kind of has an effect on funders and how they look at the organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can say that prior to our connection with BTQ, audit time was hell. It was so difficult because we've been doing this all internally. Now you've got to pull together all of the documents and what have you. And it was really, really challenging. I can say that since our partnership with BTQ, our audit process has been seamless. It's been timely. We've not had any major findings, major deficiencies. None of that. Everything has been clean, clear. The documentation is there. The board gets gets those documents in a timely manner and is able to review them, meet with both the auditor and BTQ and get any questions answered that they may have. So I can tell you, and we're just at the tail end of completing the audit for 2025. The process has been seamless. That was not always the case. It was definitely not always the case in our earlier years, where it was definitely much more challenging because all of that financial data, it was in spreadsheets. We didn't
Right.
even have a financial management program. We had Excel. So if you could imagine going into
Right.
all of the Excel documents and try, yeah, not
Right.
not pretty at all.
I can imagine. And actually, this is a great segue into my next question that has to do with, spreadsheets and kind of moving from that and, the importance of really creating a financial narrative
Hmm.
for your donors. And
Yeah.
so how do you feel like BTQ has been able to partner with you on that and really, make certain that, your donors, feel like they're a partner in the family's center's success and not just, providing revenue or funding to you, just really
Yeah, at
a
the
partner.
at the end of the day, people want to make sure that their dollars are being utilized well, right? At the end of the day, no one wants to be giving into a black hole where there's no level of confidence that my donation is actually really making a difference. And so it's all about connecting those dots. It's all about showing actually how this funding, this support is actually making a difference. It's around transparency. It's being in real good communication with your funders and showing them what is the value added for the services or for the funding, the support that they're bringing to the table. And so it's that program part that shows the outcomes, but then it's also that fiscal part to show where those dollars are, how those dollars are being used, and that they are being used efficiently. People don't want to think that their money is being wasted and it's going into a dark hole. They want to know that their funding is actually showing positive outcomes and making a real difference in the lives of your constituents.
Right. And so do you feel like the dashboards and the information that you have received on your financials make the storytelling much easier with the constituents?
Oh, it does. It absolutely does. With BTQ, we meet on a weekly basis.
Mhm.
Our board meets at least quarterly to review all of that financial data that's provided in the dashboard. But at any point in time, the board or any of our funders could say, we want to see, the finances related to this particular program. And with BTQ, we're able to say, Naima, the Jones Foundation is supporting our mental health clinic and they want to see the finances related to that. And I can get that data and provide that back to them. There's not a lot of back and forth scrambling. No, the
Right.
data is here, it's there, and we're able to share that with whomever is interested. It's really being very transparent, and that's what we get from our partnership with BTQ Financial, that the data is there. If my board comes in between a meeting and say, what's happening with this? Where are our numbers, our bank account, our cash flow? Not a problem. Let me get you that information.
Right. Great. Thank you. Um, and then, since you did bring up your board, many boards are, really comprised of financial professionals. And, they're, obviously, speak a different language than social
Mhm.
service providers. So, how does a back office partner help bridge the communication gap between the
Sure.
mission and the ROI that the board might be focused on?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a social worker by trade,
Right.
so that finances is not my area of expertise. However, I understood clearly that when I took on this role as executive director, I have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that this organization is being run appropriately. What's great about this partnership with BTQ and how it plays out in the board is you all speak the same language as a result, as it relates to financial management, right? That's a language that I had to learn. And in our working together as a team, I learned that language. So now I can talk about balance sheets and profit and loss statements and cash flow. They didn't teach me any of that in social work
Right.
school. But BTQ taught me that. And so when I sit in the room with my board members and 40% of them are definitely from the finance arena. Now we're able to have a conversation and I'm able to speak that language and I'm able to understand because even prior to going into the board meeting, I've been meeting with my team from BTQ and we've walked through all of those documents. So I'm going in there with the level of confidence that truthfully I didn't have before and that now I'm able to have those thoughtful conversations around where we are as an organization financially and not feeling out of my league because I've got people from Barclays or what have you who are now sitting at that table. Now I've learned that language because I've been able to get that understanding and that teaching from BTQ Financial. So yeah, I'm a social worker, but I know what a balance sheet looks like.
Yes, you do, Ivy. And, I think that, that it really does talk to, the strategic partnership. And, I know we talked about, the two clinics earlier that, you launched, but, really in addition to the clinics, we also worked on some, real estate moves with you as well. And I think that, as far as, working with you on that and helping you prepare information for the board to approve
Mhm.
and allow those, I think has been helpful in the storytelling as well.
That's the macro and the strategic
Mhm.
partnership that comes with BTQ. So when we began our relationship, we didn't have a federal indirect cost rate, although we had had federal contracts for many years. That was something that BTQ was able to get for us. That's huge for an organization to have that federally approved indirect cost rate to cover our very necessary administrative costs. That is really, really important. The other thing, I became the executive director in 2006. In 2007, we had to move the organization. Okay, here we go. A huge endeavor. But what was great about this was I went into this knowing clearly from BTQ, based on our finances, exactly how much we could afford for rent. You look through every budget, every contract. Based on that information, you handed me a document that said, this is how much you can afford to spend for rent. On the side, we worked with a space analysis team to figure out, based on all of our programming, how much space we needed. So when I went out to look for space, I knew what I could afford and how much space I needed. We identified our new space in 2 weeks. I didn't waste time looking at space that was either too small or too expensive. That data was so instrumental in terms of me being able to move forward quickly and be able to move this organization in a timely manner. Similarly, when we decided to take on the licensed clinics, we decided after how many years that we were going to apply for licensure to be able to offer billable mental health services. What was great about that was before we even went down that road, I had an opportunity because BTQ was already working with organizations in that space to sit down with other leaders of nonprofits and say, okay, give me all the pitfalls that we're about to go into based on taking on this new line of business of being a licensed mental health clinic. And then I was able to share that information back with my board to tell them, listen, this is going to be a loss leader for probably the first 3 to 4 years. I'm going to need you to sit in your seat. Don't jump out the window when you start seeing the numbers are not tying out to what they should be. At the end of the year, when we do our budget and we do our audit, it may look like a little bit of a loss because we're taking on this new line of business, but I'm going to need you to sit in your seat. And at every board meeting, BTQ was able to share, this is where we are, this is where we are. But what was great and what the board really needed to hear and understand, by having that licensed clinic, it opened the door for new funding opportunities that without it, we would not have been able to apply for. So they needed to sit in their seat. Let's go through the process of building this clinic. Don't jump out the window. And we were able to do that. And now when we look at our clinic, we finally, and it took us a while. Woo-wee, it took us a while. But now we're in a place where we figured out the model.
Right.
And now we're able to see where the clinic is paying for itself. But it took us a while to get there. And being able to keep the board informed of that and keep them holding on and not saying, oh, we got to get out of here. We can't do this clinic anymore because, it's a loss leader. No. Guess what? We were able to get federal contracts that we were only able to apply for because we had a licensed clinic.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And
But
it
those
is,
are the strategic
yeah,
conversations that we're having in our meetings with BTQ, and then we can go to the board as a unified front to
mhm,
say, me on the program side, this is why this is important for our clients to have this service. And then BTQ to come in and say, and yes, it's going to be a little bit of a loss leader for the first couple of years, but if we project out, this is the benefit that we see from it.
yes. And I know it's so true because, in those beginning years with the clinic, in order for us to really break even as an organization, we did have to look at different funding. We're able to get some really good wraparound funding for it and provide
Absolutely.
those additional services that were really needed in the community. So, and I think by, giving, and we, during that process, really developed better reporting systems for the clinic and really
Absolutely.
drilling down on what each clinician needed to do. So,
Exactly. And really, again, from the beginning, being transparent and
mhm.
not sugarcoating the reality of the situation, but helping the board see the long-term advantage of what these new programs and what these new lines of business could bring to the organization.
Right. And I also think it helped because we did have experience with so many other clinics in the nonprofit world that when the board would ask us if we had seen that before with other agencies, we could say that, very similar in the startup. So, really helped in their investment and support.
Absolutely.
This gets to my question regarding, really, a lot of nonprofits, consider, fully outsourcing or outsourcing their finance department. And, everyone knows it can be a little daunting, especially looking at the price of it, also looking at, staff that you might have to lay off or move into different positions. Um, but looking back on it now,
Mhm.
would you say that it's been a good return on investment for the organization and, as far as, really helping you with capacity to grow and also, one of the things that important is really kind of the peace of mind for the organization's financials.
Absolutely. So, I became the executive director in February of 2006, and I think we started our relationship with BTQ in June or July of that same year. So it was one of the first decisions I made as the head of the organization to outsource our fiscal department. And we outsourced completely. So, the person who we had as our controller and what have you, we did let that position go because we were moving to outsourcing. I would never look back. It was the right decision for the organization then, and where we are now, it continues to remain the right decision for us. Maybe it's not the right decision for everyone, but I could tell you that what the return on investment that we get is invaluable. The fact that we can have that big picture thinking. So when we need to talk strategy about whether or not it makes sense for the family center to move and to take on licensed clinics, I can have that conversation with my BTQ partner. At the same time, I know that whether they're monthly or quarterly vouchers that have to go out to our various funders is being handled. I can know at a moment's notice what's my cash flow, what's going on, what has come in
Right.
from all of the different funders that we have. So both on a macro side and on a micro side, I get everything that I need in one package. And for me, that definitely gives me peace of mind. There are things that keep me up at night.
Right.
Knowing whether there is integrity in terms of our finances is not it. Now, there may be other finances or what's happening with contracts and budgeting and funding and what have you. Oh, that stuff will keep me up at night. But wondering, ooh, are those numbers right? Is that reporting that I'm giving to the board correct? Are my vouchers to my funders in a timely manner? Because we've already paid the staff. I need to get reimbursed for what we've already paid out. Is that happening? That I don't have to worry about. There are other things that I'm worried about, but the financial integrity of our finances and our financial management and that it's being run well, from whether it's on the billing side, is the billing going in for our licensed clinics? When the whole thing shut down and there was the
Right.
whole, the virus that shut and no reimbursements were happening, I didn't have to worry about it because BTQ was on it and they made sure that we got paid for every single dollar that we were owed. So I didn't have to worry about that. I got other things to worry about, but this relationship here and the integrity of our financial management, that's not what's keeping me up at night.
Right. That's great to hear. Thank you, Ivy. And I think that, one other thing that, you mentioned earlier that, previously you had one person in your finance department. And, I think that, given the size of the organization, you were $3 million at the time. And I think that, that is, something that, as a $3 million organization, we see a
Mhm.
lot. Can you talk about a little bit about the fact that, concentrating, the finances on one person versus now working with BTQ? I know that, some people, mentioned that if it's fractional, so it might be difficult to get in touch with people. How do you feel with that setup, not having, a full person and having, but having a whole team working with you still?
Let me say that the way we were operating before did not pass what we call the hit by a bus theory. And the hit by a bus theory is if anyone gets hit by a bus, the organization should be able to manage and continue on. And we didn't on our fiscal side, we weren't meeting that theory because everything was sitting in one person. There was a lot of my time that had to be spent on reviewing vouchers and making sure that things were done in a timely manner. And I said, as the executive director, my focus now needs to shift. I
Right.
had been the deputy executive director, and the fiscal department was directly under me. So yes, that was part of my job, making sure that all of that happened. But now that I moved into this new role, I don't have the capacity to do that. And having one person do it was just, it just didn't work. And there were too many vulnerabilities there where something could fall through the cracks. And at the end of the day, I always said, if I'm going to be on the front page of the New York Times, it's going to be for doing something fantastic on behalf of the families that we serve. It is not going to be because we were misappropriating funds, that we weren't doing what we were supposed to do. That I'm not doing. And
Right.
so that model, while we had it, didn't work because it required so much of my oversight on a day-to-day basis. When in my new role as the executive director, I need to be out raising funds. I need to be meeting with potential donors and what have you. And so moving away from that and having a full team is wonderful. And I have to say, I never have an issue with me reaching out to and getting a response from my person at BTQ. I have a team. I know exactly who is responsible for each of those different areas, whether it's accounts receivable, accounts payable, my client manager, my deputy client manager. I know who's responsible for what, as does my team members here who interface with the BTQ staff on a regular basis. So if there's a problem, I'm not seeing it. I wake up in the morning and I've already got a ton of emails from BTQ staff. Ivy, this is okay. We're on it. We're on it. So the level of communication is great. And as I said, we meet on a weekly basis.
Right.
I meet with the
Right.
BTQ staff on a weekly basis. My team, who are here overseeing programs and what have you, they meet much more frequently. They're supposed to. That's their job.
Right. That's great. Thank you, Ivy. And I guess, just to follow up on that, it sounds like, this was one of the first things that you worked on with your board. Was it very difficult when you presented the partnership with BTQ and the family center to them as far as outsourcing? How did?
No, I don't think it was difficult at all. I think they understood the reason why we needed to move in that direction and the value added that we were going to be able to get if we were to quantify all of the different parts of the financial management that we needed to oversee. It would have been much more expensive for us if we tried to do it internally. And so it was actually a great cost savings to us. I think when you first look at it on paper, it's like, woof. Yeah,
Right.
but when you start adding in how much of your time you're spending, how much time are other people, at the end of the day, it was well worth the investment.
Right. That's great. And would you say that the amount of time now that the board focuses on your financials has changed?
It's lessened.
Right.
It's left lessened because there's a level of confidence that they now have in terms of our financials that it is not an issue. BTQ is at every single board meeting. There's a dashboard that is being presented to the board that they are walked through. If there are any questions that the board has, our BTQ rep is right there to be able to answer them. If it's a question that they don't have an answer to, they're guaranteed that we will get back to them with the answer to that question. So there's a level of confidence that
Hmm.
they now have that, oh no, the finances are being run and we operate transparently. Again, when we went with the clinics, we were transparent from the very beginning. This is going to be a loss leader for about the first 3 years. But we believe that the long-term outcome is going to benefit the agency. And at every board meeting, we're going to give you a report as to where we are and what are we doing to help move that needle to get us to where we need to be.
Great. Great. Thank you, Ivy. All of the information that you provided us with today was very, very helpful. Um, I'm going to turn it back over to EJ now, in case, anyone in the audience might have a question for us.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much, Naima, and thank you very much for that as well, Ivy. That's wonderful walk through a bit of your experience with the BTQ team. We don't have any questions as of yet, so maybe just allow a few more moments to see if we have anything that comes in. And certainly I want to take a quick moment to just reflect on something that Ivy and the team uh, have mentioned there. It's one thing that we talk about financial resilience as a concept, but it's another thing entirely to see it in action during a crisis when so many things are happening. And it's one of the reasons we wanted to build this blueprint. Well, it was because we see this so often with nonprofits struggling with the manual burden of back office operations. And when you're in the business of community impact, every hour spent in spreadsheets or there with the board is an hour taken away from working with a family in need. So certainly a very, very, very important topic.
Let me just say one of the things that we're going to be working with BTQ
Absolutely.
on in the next few weeks is, we're working in a very volatile funding situation where things are changing minute by minute. And so, our budget runs from a July through June. That's our fiscal year. And so we're about to go into budgeting, and budgeting is always challenging, and it's even more so challenging in this current environment. So we're already having conversations around contingency budgeting. So let's have a budget if everything goes well and we get all of our funding. But then let's have another budget that looks at whether or not there are some cuts or what have you, and how we might be able to manage that from a personnel perspective. What does that mean in terms of staff lines, um, and things like that. So that's again the value added that, we're entering into a very uncertain time, but yet I've got my partner at BTQ Financial, and together with my leadership team, we're going to be looking at the budgets and having a conversation around what is it going to look like going forward, and what are some of the contingencies that we need to put in place to be able to mitigate or to continue to operate in the midst of all of this uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very important. I mean, me personally, I know how important that is in a personal sense, how much more so for an organization of your size and capabilities to have those contingencies. We did have a question come in. I think this one is more directed towards you, Naima. Um, the question for the BTQ team, did you find many of the nonprofits you partner with engage your services to completely replace their internal financial office, or do you see a hybrid model?
I would say that most of the clients that we work with, it is a full outsourcing, but there's always someone that we have as a liaison that works with us at that organization. So the things that they work with us on tend to be accounts payable, making sure that we're receiving in all the invoices, for any of the vendors, and also on the government contracts piece. And, we prepare all of the vouchers and variances. However, we do need assistance sometimes and help escalating when contracts are not vouchered. So that's a really important position to remain at the organization
Mhm.
as well. But
And
that's
we have
usually
and we have that at the family center. We have a primary point person who makes sure, because some of our funders are very complicated in terms of how they want their vouchering done, and there are all kind of, nuances. This one wants pennies, but this one doesn't want pennies. And so being able to communicate that to BTQ is really important, because at the end of the day, yes, BTQ is preparing the vouchers on our behalf and managing all of that. But at the end of the day, this is still the family center. And so we want to ensure the quality and, always have that Q&A. So we always have someone internally who is the primary conduit with BTQ, just because sometimes with the funders, there are nuances that we may know that we need to share with BTQ about a particular funder. So we do, and we're also very, not very, we like to keep our
Very
hands
hands-on.
very hands-on. Thank you. Thank you, Naima.
I love it. I love it. Another question that came in, Naima, does BTQ handle all of your accounts receivable and accounts payable? And how do you share invoices, etc., with them? And I guess them being us, BTQ.
Right. So yes, we manage the entire AP process with our clients. So typically, we'll receive the invoices in from either the family center will send them to us, and they can upload them to us, or they can email them to us, or they come directly from the vendors. What we try to do is for most of expenses, I would say like 80% of those should be able to be hard coded. So we'll set those up to be allocated out the same way every month. But if they're program specific and contract expensive, then those would be coded by the programs. And then on a monthly basis, we make sure that we're reviewing the financials with the team. So those financials, when we review them, if we see that things were misallocated, we'll go back and make that adjustment at the time.
Got it. Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think this one is for you, Ivy, probably to get a little bit of an understanding of the family center and the operations that you guys have there. The question is, what is the size of the family center, number of employees, and number of clients served?
Sure. So we're about $6.5 million in terms of our budget, about 50 full-time staff. And in terms of clients in 2025, we served about 2,300 individual clients across all of our programs.
Yeah, that is a lot to manage. And this one's more of a statement, but I think it resonates with everything that your story has that in common with a lot of the different centers that are having similar challenges. And the statement was, way to go, get your board of directors on board with the program is necessary, but not make money the first or second year. Your statement about tell the board to sit down and hear what is going on. So I think just sharing how much of a similar situation they're probably in there.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I do at my board meetings is that at every single board meeting, we start with a program presentation, because I need the board to be grounded in what is actually happening on the ground. And so one of my staff in one of my programs will come to the board meeting, and they will present on a particular program, the impact and what is being the goals, the long-term goals and outcomes that are being achieved for the clients that are participating in that program. That is essential. That is absolutely essential to make sure that the board is always grounded in the actual work that is happening on the ground. The other thing that may be unique to the family center, but I imagine is also in place at other organizations, is I actually have two board members that are former clients of the organization. One is a mom living with a life-threatening illness, and the other is a caregiver of children who lost their parents to life-threatening illness. Their voice is really important in terms of the board understanding the actual impact of the services on families and why the services that we offer are important.
Certainly very, very important work that's being done there. Well, folks, I think that brings us to the conclusion here. I'm going to launch a quick poll here while we get into the closing remarks. Certainly this was a wonderful topic, a really, really great discussion to have had. Um, I'm going to also put my contact information there in the chat, folks. We're looking forward to doing more and more of these webinars. We want to continue to have them on a regular basis. I'll have my contact information. If you have a thought that you'd like to see us talk about in a webinar, we'd love to hear from you and understand what it is that's on your mind. But any closing remarks, any closing thoughts you'd like to make, Naima or Ivy?
I would just say that, again, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary. Me as the head of this organization and our partnership with BTQ. And I would say that it has definitely been a great partnership. That's not to say that we've not had some ebbs and flows throughout the 20 years and that we've needed to recalibrate and come back to the table and say, okay, this is working, this is not working. What do we need to do to get back on track? And we've been able to have those conversations and to get back to where we need to be. And so I have no reservations at all about the decision that we made to outsource to BTQ Financial. I'm planning to be here for the next 5 or 6 years before it's time for me to retire. The next executive director can come in and decide what they want to do, but as long as I'm here and running this organization, this is a partnership that I plan on maintaining.
Fantastic.
That's great, Ivy. Thank you so much. And I just want to echo how it has been such a great partnership over the last 20 years. And, we really have enjoyed working with the Family Center and seeing them grow significantly, doubling in size, which is only providing more services to participants. So we really have been in sync with them. As you can see, Ivy and I both have on green today. We just so happen to. And so, we really have, it's been great. And, I've been, as I said, been with BTQ for 20 years and have worked with them for over that
The entire
time.
time.
So it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we look
thank you
forward to
both.
talking to more people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you both for your time presenting that and your continued partnership with us, Ivy. And folks, again, thank you for tuning in. This will also be sent out in the next 24 hours or so in case you had to drop early or wanted to review some of the things that we went over. But thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank
day,
you. Bye.
everyone.
Bye.